Hello guys, welcome to the second video of the week. In this video, in SMMA, I'm going to be teaching you guys how to recruit for your social media marketing agency and like the things you kind of should look for and how to actually interview, because I know most of you, have never had any recruiting experience prior to starting your own SMMAs, which is why I'm going to be able to go over exactly what you should say, how you should act, etc, etc. So if that sounds like you, stick around to this end of the video to learn more about recruitment for your agency. This isn't really spoken about on YouTube ever, because especially like team management and actually running an agency, I don't see any YouTuber really talking about how to, communicate, blah, blah. I'm pretty sure I'm the only one. But yeah, without further wasting your time, let's get into this video. So before I get into, why you should, how you should interview and recruit and where to look for those candidates, I'm going to be going over very briefly on why you should outsource some of the work in the first place. And tomorrow's video, I'm going to be teaching you guys exactly what you can outsource and at what stage of your agency you should outsource them. So yeah, stick around, subscribe if you're not already, like this video if you found it useful, and let's get into why you should outsource in the first place. An agency essentially is supposed to be like a cash cow business model where, you're delivering some sort of performance-driven service, adding an incredible value to your client, but then, be able to outsource it to make everything fairly passive, especially on the service delivery side on you. And then, you're able to focus on the more income-producing tasks. What I mean by income producing tasks in the beginning, if you don't have a client already, you should do nothing but sales Monday to Saturday, 8 hours a day. That's all you should be focusing on until you have clients. And I see people just not doing that, like faffing about with websites and stuff. Like, I've never been pulled up for not having a website, and for the longest time my URL led to clickfunnels.com, which is terrible because I forgot to set up the DNS forwarding, but more on that next week. But yeah, anyways, so you don't need a website, you don't need like a bunch of the things you think you need, you just literally need to do personalized outreach to companies that you genuinely think you'll be able to add an incredible amount of value to. So yeah, the reason you should mainly outsource is literally just because you want to focus on one aspect of the business at once and then just managing the rest and making sure that everything else flows nicely. So what I mean by that is, you want enough time freedom to focus on actually growing and building the business, as opposed to, focusing on the nitty-gritty especially in terms of service delivery, which is very, very time consuming, doing all the client research, actually doing all the media buying and the strategizing, and then like documentation. And yeah, it's a lot of work, which is why I highly recommend everyone get a media buyer straight away. Obviously you can oversee the strategy and stuff and the budget allocation, but then they can actually do the manual labor of, actually delivering the service, which is how I run my agency at the moment. So what even is a contractor, and like what kind of relationship should you have with contractors? So with contractors, essentially they are, people that you bring onto your team that works on a per client basis. So that means, it's not like a typical employee to employer relationship. It's more so, I know you're competent in this, come on my team, I'll have you do this and I'll pay you this amount for the performance that you give, which is the way to go about it for all agency owners in the beginning, because there's no fixed overheads if you don't get any clients. However, the downside to this is, obviously the pro is there's no overheads. The con is the fact that they're not going to be very loyal, simply because a typical media buyer often is working for multiple agencies at once, just because there's so many trash agency owners out there that wouldn't bring consistent work to their media buyer, which is why they tend to kind of hop around a lot of the time and there's really no loyalty in them, which is why I'm going to be covering, why you should actually inspire them and, how to actually increase the retention of your media buyers and how to actually make them want to work for you and stay loyal to you. So yeah, stick around to this end of the video to find out. So the types of team members that you need to bring on board initially is, first of all, a media buyer. That is absolutely crucial. Second, I would say probably like a designer or someone to do basic edits to the creatives that your client gives you, just because that saves not only the client a lot of time and money, but also if you guys work in tandem with each other, it's way more fluid in terms of operationally. And to be honest, graphic designers and video editors, they're a much more low ticket service, as they're less performance driven, which is why it's actually quite easy to outsource and it's not too expensive either. So yeah, I think that would be the second call and the second team member you should bring on. The third one would be like an appointment setter, meaning, someone to do all the outreach for you, at least lead generation, maybe not the outreach, because I like personalizing all of my emails and, really honing down on the businesses that I want to work with, which is why I do all of the outreach myself currently. But yeah, so getting an appointment setter really works well in terms of like a virtual assistant. They're very cheap. You can outsource it to India, Vietnam, Philippines, literally anywhere where labor is cheap. So yeah. Moving on, where do you actually find these people? Now, with my current media buyer, it was actually a referral from Gabriel. We co-signed him simply because he is a massive talent and I do want to keep him long term, which is why, and working with him has been super pleasant so far, which is why I want to keep him long term. So we co-signed him to be able to bring him more work. And that way, also, if you co-sign with like a friend who's an agency owner as well, it tends to mean that you're going to be able to increase the retention, simply because normally two agencies bring them work at a constant rate is works out very well long term, just because they're probably more inclined to not interview for other agencies. So referrals, in my opinion, is the best way to go about it, especially for complete beginner agency owners. So Gabriel knew how to interview and do everything properly, whereas me in the beginning, I was slightly more naive and didn't really know how to interview like properly. I knew how to interview, like I was good at interviewing because I did it all of last summer pretty much, doing recruitment for various agencies. And then, but yeah, interviewing for media buyer is slightly different. So yeah, I'm going to cover how to interview just in like literally 2 minutes. So stick around for that as well. Another place you can find it is Facebook groups. So Facebook ads, media buyer or something, or like ads buyer or something, is like a massive group. You can just post like a job listing on that and then you'll have people DMing you constantly. And make sure you ask for case studies and you ask for them to screen share on the actual interview. Another place you can go for is Upwork. Upwork is a phenomenal place to find freelancers. Just a great platform in general. However, I would always recommend you guys take the conversation off of the platform, just because Upwork has a 20% fee, which is just disgusting. You don't want to be paying someone 20% more essentially of what you would initially have paid them. So which is why I never go through Upwork directly in terms of payments. So yeah. Now, let's get into the part that you guys have been all waiting for. How do you actually interview someone and tell that they're competent? For me, I go off a lot on like energies and vibe. So my gut instinct about people normally is right now. So I just like kind of trust my intuition with that. If my intuition disqualifies them, then they're out of the game straight away, no matter if they have like the best case studies or whatever. But in terms of overall structure, so going back to what I said earlier, like why would they even want to work for you? Because obviously, a media buyer with solid case studies and who knows what they're talking about, they're probably going to want to find an agency owner that also is on the same level as them. So in the beginning, it's very, very difficult to convince a good media buyer to actually want to work for you, which is why, you need to see it. A lot of people have it kind of twisted, like especially beginner agency owners. What they think is, it should be an honor for a media buyer to work for you. No. In the beginning, it would be an honor for the media buyer to come on board to your team, which is why how I do my interviews is literally basically the same structure as my sales calls. So how I would do it, number one, the structure is, discovery phase. So I would literally I would sit there and be like, hey, what are your hobbies? What's your background? What's your story? Tell me everything about you, basically. how can I get to know them on a personal level? Is there anything I can relate to? And then second stage, I would tell them about myself. So, you know, my background, how I entered the industry and where I aspire to be in the next 12 months, etc., etc., and like how I plan to grow it, and, you know, how I see a media buyer fitting into my company, and etc., etc. And to make sure just really like inspire them with your story, you know. So me is very easy, you know, first generation immigrant, grew up fairly broke, my family, you know, living on top of like chicken shops and stuff. I'm not going to go into the sob story that I normally give. It's not really a sob story, it's more just like what actually happened. But yeah, that tends to be very relatable, especially to, you know, media buyers based out in the Philippines and like any Asian country essentially, or even in like Eastern Europe where it is more of a struggle to get by essentially, and it's slightly less advanced in terms of a country than, let's say, the UK, which is why it's very, very easy for me to like properly inspire them with my story and then bring them on board and have them buy into my agency and my company culture. Company culture is a massive thing, by the way. You might think, you know, someone living in India might not care about that, which is true, they might not care about it, but to be honest, if you convince them, if you genuinely are going to treat them very, very well, etc., etc., they're going to be so grateful, because honestly, a lot of people kind of take advantage of third world countries. Highly don't recommend you do that. So number 3, I would get them to talk about their case studies, numbers, past experience, etc., etc., and the strategies they would use. And ideally, pro tip, get them to share screens of their business manager. Definitely do that. Get on the call with them, have them run you through, you know, like, what's this campaign for? How are you optimizing? Are you using CBO, ABO? Like, what's this ad set for? Why are you targeting like that? And, you know, if this ad set doesn't work out, how do you plan to, you know, go to the next ad set? And, you know, with these ads, like, how do you rule out this audience just doesn't work completely? Like, what are the metrics that you use? And then how does it fit in with your agency, etc., etc.? This is where the really like technical knowledge comes in, which is why I always make sure to tell people like that want to get into the Facebook ads game, you need to be like, you need to know the shit like the back of your hands. Like, honestly, you can't run a very successful agency without knowing any of the service delivery. So which is why my Facebook ads knowledge right now is pretty sick. Like, it's not bad at all. I know for a fact that if I started running ads for my clients myself, I'd be able to pull off some crazy numbers as well. So yeah. Anyways, number 4, this is where you close them. So what I mean by this is, do you think, you know, they're a good fit? If they're a good fit, then you would kind of be like, hey, I'll get back to you within the next week with my decision, just so that you can interview other people, you know. And also another thing is, at the close, you would be asking for their rates. So with, you know, Filipino people, Indian people, and even some Eastern Europeans, they would tend to lowball themselves. So if I see some incredible talent, like with my current media buyer, his starting price was $200 a client, which I was just like, nah, you deserve more. So I'm paying way, like, more than double of what he initially asked, or way more than double of than he initially asked for, just because you want to show goodwill to people that truly deserve it. You don't want to rip people off. 100% don't ever do that. Like, I promise you, if you rip someone off in terms of one of your contractors and employees, it's gonna come back to haunt you, and it's gonna affect you way more in the future. So yeah, like, just make sure that if you see someone that's massively talented, just lack the confidence and underprices their own services, then definitely look to, you know, bolster that up a little bit and just be like, look, judging from your experience, I would be way more comfortable, you know, paying you X amount. And normally that really does increase retention as well. So like, where you can, do try to pay your, you know, contractors more than they ask for. But obviously some people that actually know their worth, then, you know, don't do that. Just pay the price that they're asking. And, you know, just interview, I'd say about like 5 to 10, and then you'll be able to have a good idea of what's a good fit for you and what's not. So yeah, hope you guys really enjoyed this video. And I look forward to seeing you guys on tomorrow's video, where I'm going to be talking about exactly what you can outsource and at what stage of your agency journey you should be outsourcing. So yeah, look forward to that. Subscribe, like this video if you haven't already, and comment down below any questions you have regarding recruitment. And I'll see you guys on tomorrow's video. Bye guys.